Hi everybody, welcome to the 2024 Block of the Month, the Winter Wonder Sampler. In this program we're going to be making this gorgeous quilt behind me. It finishes at 66 by 73 and the program includes all the fabric you need to make the top, and it also includes the binding. You will need to add batting and backing. The pattern is written by Anka's Treasures, and you will each be getting a pattern in your first month's kit. And the pattern is very, very well written. We will mostly be following the pattern as written. We will have additional cutting directions, which I'm going to discuss in a few minutes. I didn't use a whole lot of extra equipment in this block of the month, but I did use 3 things that you will find very helpful. The first is a folding pen, and you're going to see me use this later on in the video. This makes your seams nice and flat, and it helps when you're nesting seams, which is what I'll show you later today. When we make the trees, the month with the trees, we are going to demonstrate how to use a ruler. This is the Spiderweb ruler by Creative Grids. Those of you who took our class about making coffee cups and came to our tea several years ago, this is the same ruler that we used for that project. The pattern actually recommends the triangular ruler by Heather Peterson, so if you have that one, that'll work. Or if you have any triangle ruler where this angle is a 45-degree angle, that triangle ruler will also work. What will not work is the 45-degree lines on your regular quilting ruler that is long and square. That actually won't work. We need this angle and markings about distance. Again, I only used this 1 month when we make the trees, which will be the 3rd month. So, and I will demonstrate other ways of making the trees without this ruler. It's just if you have it tucked away somewhere, you might want to pause the video and go find it now before you forget. The last ruler I used was the corner pop. I used this beginning with the mittens, and in pretty much every month. I used it every month except the scarves and the trees. Again, it's optional. You don't have to have it. It does make your piecing more accurate, and I will show you how to use it, but we will also show you how to piece without the corner pop ruler if you don't want to use it. Okay? The order we're going to be doing things in, this is a 6-month program. We're going to make the scarves, the red scarf at the top and the one at the bottom, in month 1. Month 2, we are going to make the mittens. Month 3, we're going to make the trees. Month 4, we're going to do this section that has these snowflake blocks in it. Month 5, we're going to make this section that has the snowman pieced in. It's really fun. And then month 6, we'll be putting the whole quilt together and adding the border. It's going to be a really fun project, and I'm really looking forward to leading you through it. There are a couple of things I want to tell you right up front. One is we have Janome machines. You guys all know that. Most of you have been to class here. We have Janome machines, and those of you who have the HP foot, that is the foot I used for almost the entire project. It might be the entire project. But what you need to do is find your 1/4-inch foot or your scant 1/4-inch foot, which is what the HP foot is, and you just need to use the same foot the whole time. That's more important than worrying about whether you've got a full 1/4 or a scant 1/4. It's more important that you have a consistent 1/4-inch seam through the entire project. The second question that always gets asked at the beginning of these projects is, what color thread did we use? I just used a Dove Gray. I used Aurifil 2600, but any Dove Gray would work. It's a lot of sewing white to another high contrast fabric, so when I do that, I prefer to use a light gray. One thing I want to tell you now is I want to address long arming right now. We will finish this up and it will be fall, and we will be in the middle of our Christmas crunch. For this project, we're going to give you the opportunity to pay $25, and right now, well, at any time up through about July, and that will reserve your spot. And what that means is you're paying $25 now, and we will hold your spot so that when you finish, if you finish before Christmas and you want this done for Christmas, we will make sure we have it long-armed for you. There will be a little bit more details about that. You can't bring it in on December 20th and think I'm going to get it done, because I'm pretty much falling apart by then, and there's just no way. So we'll have a little bit more detail about that as we get closer, but what I want you to know right now is if you give us a $25 deposit, that will hold your spot and you will be sure to get your quilt back by Christmas. If you don't care if you have that quilt back by Christmas, there's no reason to pay the $25 now. Long arming in the shop for this quilt will it's $144, but with the discount you get, because you got all of your fabric here, your price will be $115. We will credit your $25 deposit off the cost of long arming this quilt. If you never finish, then I'm very sorry, your deposit is sacrificed. But I know you will, because it's a really fun and easy project. Two more quick tips. One is we don't have a lot of extra fabric on this quilt. That is why we had to limit it to only 15 people. We do have some extra, but there are a couple of things in here that we have just barely, we're working it just barely enough. So be careful with your cutting, and be aware that there's like 1 or 2 gray squares in here. If you ruin them, you might have to settle for a different gray, but believe me, we have plenty of other grays. So be careful with your cutting. And the last thing is, as we go, you need to label, label, label. We are going to be cutting a lot of different size pieces all the way through the whole quilt, and it's very easy to get them mixed up. There's a lot of times it's 1 1/4 by 3 1/2 and 1 1/2 by 3 1/2. And if you get those two mixed up, you sometimes don't find out until you're putting the whole square together, and then you're just kind of irritated and you have to start way back over. So read the pattern carefully, label things carefully, and I think you'll really enjoy this. All right, so that's all your introductory information. I'm going to start out now by giving you some additional information about month 1. In your month 1 kit, you're going to have your pattern, and you're going to have a cut of red fabric, and you're going to have a cut of background fabric, which is white with, here, it looks like this. It's white and it has tiny little red and green dots on it. Okay, that's the background fabric for the border. All right, and this month we're going to be making scarves. We're going to make 2 of them, and in your pattern, it actually talks about each of the red fabrics. Each of the red fabrics is because the pattern gives you the option of making 2 different color scarves. We're making our scarves all the same. So the one thing I have found with this pattern that I thought was a little bit harder was when she gives you a list of things to cut, she just gives you this long list of different size pieces to cut. So each month, I think each month, we're going to be giving you additional cutting directions. And what it's going to be is an attempt to help you figure out how to cut your laundry list of pieces from the big pieces of fabric we give you. So, for example, you have to cut a whole bunch of different size pieces from your red fabric, and you have a 1/2 yard cut of red fabric, okay? So we're going to review just basic cutting ideas here because it's very, very important. The first thing you need to do is you need to open up your red fabric and you need to press it, okay? You've always got this pressed in fold. You need to press it out. Yes, we're going to re-fold it, but so the first thing we do is press the whole thing, making sure we press out our fold. And then you just want to press the rest of it, making sure you get rid of any weird wrinkles, or sometimes things get the bolts get shoved in together and the bolts end up with wrinkly ends, and sometimes you end up getting those wrinkly ends. So you want to just press all of the wonkiness and all of the yuck out of your fabric, okay? Once you do that, yes, you're going to refold it, okay? We're going to refold it so that we've got our two selvages together, and you want them to match up exactly. And what you want to happen is when you lay it down on your cutting mat, you're going to make sure that it lays nice and flat. If you fold it and it's off, sometimes that's okay, but what you don't want are wrinkles in the fabric anywhere. So get your selvages together and make sure your fabric smooths out. Now we're going to straighten an edge, okay? You're going to straighten an edge by laying one of the solid black horizontal lines on either the fold or on your selvage. It's easier to lay it on the fold because your selvage has fuzzy edges. And what you want to do is you want to lay it close to an edge of your fabric, but you want a little bit of your fabric hanging out. And you want to make sure you're trimming some fabric off everywhere. But what we're trying to do is, see how up here the fabric is uneven? It's uneven all the way along here. And that's what we're trying to get rid of, is that uneven edge. We want it to be perfectly straight. So when we cut, we want it to be perfectly straight on the edge of the solid line of our ruler, and then you want to be cutting some off the whole length of your ruler. Now, don't let your ruler slip. If you have a Quilter Select ruler, you're 90% of the way there. But this is a long cut, so if you have to, get halfway and move your hand. When you move your hand, stop moving your rotary cutter. That would be bad. Once you've got your edge perfectly straight, do yourself a favor and turn the whole mat around, okay?
Give your fabric a ride.
Yeah, give your fabric a ride, like the tilt-a-whirl. Only, unlike kids, the fabric won't get sick. Okay, once you have straightened your edge, now you're ready to cut your pieces. You'll notice that these sizes are exactly the same as the sizes listed in your pattern. Our directions are telling you to cut twice as many for the red fabric only. The ivory fabric, which is your background with the green and red dots, you're going to cut the exact same amount, but for the red we're going to cut twice as many because we only have one red. So in the pattern she tells you you're going to need 1 1/4 by 9 inch pieces. You need 8 of them. So you're going to cut 2 1 1/4 by width of fabric strips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on my fabric and underneath my ruler over here, I'm going to cut those. So I'm going to line the edge of my ruler. I'm going to put it on the straightened edge, okay? I've got the edge of my fabric on the 1 1/4 inch line of my ruler, okay? And I'm going to cut a strip. And I need 2 of them. So I'm going to make sure, whoops. You should change the blade in your rotary cutter when you start this project. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing again because I need 2 strips. That's what my directions said. Okay, there we go. So I've got my 2 1 1/4 inch strips. Now, if I were you guys, what I would do is I would look and see, okay, now I would cut all of these where it says by width of fabric. I would cut all of those first, because then I won't move my original piece of fabric here. It's just gonna lay here, and you don't have to re-straighten your edge unless you make a mistake, which is okay. Once you have those cut, then you're gonna go back and see, okay, I have my 1 1/4 inch strips. I'm supposed to subcut 9-inch pieces from that strip, and I need 8 of those, okay? So here's how this is gonna go. Once we've got this all cut up into strips, I need 8 1 1/4 by 9-inch strips. First of all, I know everybody likes to cut things double. Everybody but us, we don't. Cutting things double, first of all, if you make a mistake, you've just made 2 mistakes, not 1. And second of all, the fabric can slip on itself, and then you can end up with wonky pieces. So the first thing you're gonna do is cut your selvage off. And you wanna cut past, you'll see your little solid line, and then you see little bitty dots in there. Cut past the dots. I've lined up my fabric on here. Got a solid line. I'm gonna keep my edge nice and square. So I've got my fabric lined up on this solid line, and now I'm just gonna cut the little piece of selvage that's hanging off the edge, okay? Now I need 9-inch pieces. A lot of people go to their mat now and start cutting 9 inches on the mat. I don't. I still use my ruler. I like this shorter one, but your longer one works as well. Turn it this way. It's got numbers going this way too, all right? So I'm gonna turn it. These need to be 9 inches. I'm gonna line it up on the 9. And the other thing I'm doing here is making sure that my fabric lays on a solid line all the way down. It lays on a solid line here at my 9-inch mark, and then it lays on the solid line all the way down here too. And then I'm gonna cut, okay? And I'm gonna do that until I have the 8 pieces that my directions say I need. All right? So when it says subcut, that's what it means. It means you're gonna turn your piece and you're gonna cut it so you get those pieces that it says in the directions, okay? And it is really, really, really important that you keep all your pieces straight on here. Everything in this block is cut from strip sets. What is a strip set? A strip set is it's a set of strips sewn together. The number one problem we have with strip sets is a lot of times you sew them together, and this will be an exaggeration, and they start to do this at one end, okay? They just sort of drift. And that drifting, it can be caused by sewing, but most often, in my experience, I found it's caused by cutting. So you need to make sure your pieces are straight the whole entire time. So there's a part in here where you have to cut 17-inch long pieces, and I'm serious, cut them so that you've got your big long piece, lay them under your ruler, and if they're not staying on your solid line, see, this guy's off down here, that makes your strip sets go off. So it could just be that your strip isn't laying flat, which this fold wasn't pressed out real well, so that's part of it. But you need it to be straight all the way from cutting. It's really, really important. And this.
Okay, now is it the correct width all the way down?
Yes, that's the other thing. Good point. You want to check that too. So it's on my solid line here, and it's supposed to be 1 1/4 inches. Is it 1 1/4 inches? And it is the whole way down. Okay. So the cutting on this block in particular is important, and this is a great way to practice because there's not a lot of pressure here. We're just making 2 scarves this month, okay? Okay, so that's how the cutting directions are gonna work most months. You're gonna get, instead of just us giving you the fabric and this laundry list of things to cut, we're gonna tell you how to cut it. And if you have questions, please just come in and ask. Okay, now I'm gonna demonstrate for you step 24. You're going to be on pages 11 and 12 in your pattern this month. You're just gonna follow the directions as they're written here. Ignore all my chicken scratch, but you're just gonna follow the directions as they're written. They're very straightforward and easy to follow. You just need to be careful that you're using the right size pieces, okay? So the red is gonna be your red, and the white or ivory, they call it ivory snowflake. This is ivory snowflake, okay, in the directions. Step 23, you're gonna assemble a bunch of strip sets, and then you're gonna subcut those into smaller pieces to make the end sections of the scarf. But now we're gonna talk about step 24. Step A tells you to sew your 1.5 by 17 inch pieces into a strip set just like this. So once you've got it together, it should measure 3.5 by 17, okay? If you are coming out uneven at one end, then you've either pulled on your strips while you sewed them together or you cut them wrong. But you need this to be at least 17 inches long. Then they tell you to press it, and I pressed mine open. Open means they're flatter and they're easier to cut. And then you're gonna cut into 1.5 inch sections, okay? You do have a little bit extra. So what I'm gonna do actually is straighten the edge of this. So when I do this, I check a whole lot of places. I'm straight there, I check and make sure I'm straight here, I check and make sure I'm straight here, and I check and make sure I'm straight up here, okay? And then you're gonna straighten your edge just the way you did for your big piece. And then this one isn't quite as long. And then you're just gonna subcut 1.5 inch sections of these. To make one scarf, you're going to need 10 of these sections. You're gonna need 10 of these little 1.5 by 3.5 inch guys. And I believe, no you don't, okay. So you're just gonna cut until you have 10 of these little sections, okay? For the block we're gonna make, we need 2. Okay, so that's step A. You sew this strip set and you cut it up. And now for step B, we're gonna make another strip set. These pieces are 1.5 inches wide by 9 inches long, and we're gonna sew them together, and I'm gonna show you how to do that, because what's important here is not stretching the fabric. All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay one of these guys on top of the other, and you wanna make sure that it's laying pretty straight. If it's doing this kind of stuff, you want to double check that your strip is straight. Okay, so I've got my raw edges exactly together, and now I'm going to sew. I'm going to use a 1.8 stitch length. I'm using the HP foot.
You need to change your stitching.
Oh, thank you. And I'm gonna sew, I've got them, I lined up, I know, to here. We don't have to back stitch because we're gonna sew over them later. And when I sew to my finger, and now I'm gonna make sure that the rest of this strip, I've got my raw edges exactly together. And I'm not pulling. Sometimes our instincts are to, if we get to the bottom and find out they're not exactly even, we kind of want to tug on it. And again, that makes your strips wonky and it's going to make your block not lay nice. Okay. So now we have to sew your other strip onto the other side. And if you can't keep this open, if this is going to give you trouble, go press your seams open right now. But if you can get these guys lined up perfectly, then you can press all at once. Either method is fine. And some days you might feel like doing it one day and some days another. And I've got my raw edges together and they're going right along the edge of my foot. Again, this is the HP foot, which is a scant quarter. Okay, so now we're going to press our seams open. Trim my extra guys off here. And I'm going to press the seams open. Again, I have to cut these into little sections. So pressing it open makes it easier to do that. And then I almost always press from my front as well, just to make sure that my seams.
Well, you'll see any folds if you flip it over and press that.
Well, yeah, and that's what, because on the long arm, that's the #1 thing that causes wrinkles on the long arm is when your seams are pressed like this and you've got extra little bits. So if you press it from the front, now I messed it up. If you press it from the front too, then those all go away. Okay, so again, I'm going to straighten an edge, and this gives me an opportunity to check and see how well I did. So these are straight, this is straight, this is along a straight line, and this is all of my straight lines are straight on my ruler, which is really exciting. Okay, so now I'm going to cut again. I'm going to cut this into 1.5 inch sections. So I've got my 1.5 inch line here. And this one you cut 5. And then you get to sew them together into these cute little 9 patches. And then that makes it really, really fun. So, oh, well, I screwed that one up. I can probably fix it. I can fix this guy. But what happens when you screw up like that? Well, I certainly don't have a straight edge anymore. So that one's straight. But this one is not. So what do I need to do? I need to re-straighten my edge. And one of the reasons we know this is a good pattern is because she has a little bit extra built into all of these strip sets. So if you do that, first of all, go get a Quilter Select ruler that has a non-slip coating on it. And then you just need to re-straighten if you ever have a bobble like that. Okay, so now what you're gonna do is we're gonna sew these into these cute little 9 patches. But the first thing we're gonna do is grab our handy dandy folding pen, and we're gonna grab our little pieces like this, and we're going to repress our seams. So when we repress our seams, we press all of our seams we want to press towards the red, okay? So we're going to press these guys out towards the red and these guys in towards the red. But what I've found is that when you do that, it doesn't always want to lay really, really flat, okay? So what we do is we grab our folding pen, and the folding pen, you can put it anywhere really. You can put it on the inside here if you want. You can put it on the outside, but what you're trying to do is get it along that seam you just sewed. And then once you do that, now it's wet. Now you should be able to press your seams in. So how does this little pen work? Well, it's quite amazing. It comes with this little bottle. It says it's fabric folding pen liquid. The running joke for years has been we actually think that unicorns cry into these bottles, because what happens is you fill your pen, you're going to unscrew your lid, and you fill the pen with water to the line right here, this line. And then after you've added your water, which that's the hardest part because this hole is really small, but once you've added your water, then you take this and you put in, it says 3 to 5 drops of the magical liquid. I always put 5. I don't screw around. And then you put your lid back on and you shake it up a little bit. And then you store it upright, because if you store it upside down, the unicorn tears and water leak out into your lid. This pen is amazing, but has some serious design flaws, but it's still worth it, okay? So if you store it upside down, when you come back, take the lid off upside down, because it's gonna be full of liquid. And then you can unscrew it and just pour it back in there, but still, it's kind of a mess. So once you've got your pen ready to go, like I said, you just run it along your seams and then you press again, and we're pressing everything towards the red, okay? And you get amazingly flat seams that aren't peeking up and trying to escape, okay? So I'm gonna do the same thing on these guys. And I'm gonna press my seams out to the red. If you have a steam iron, that really helps too. Or an iron that steams. This is a steam iron, but it doesn't really steam. And the same thing here, out towards the red. And I press from both sides because I want to make sure that I'm not getting any fold over. I want it to be flat and exactly the way it's supposed to. So now,
And if you get some fold over and you need to correct it, put a little more of the fabric
folding pen, yeah.
on it.
Because when unicorns cry, it's amazing. So now we're going to sew these together in this order, okay? And so what's happened is the seams should nest. So what that means is when you lay it down, this little red square should fit perfectly between these two seams. And when you take your fingers and smush them together, your seams should line up exactly, okay? So now we're gonna sew those and we're gonna see if it's as magical as I've been promising. Make sure we have our raw edges all together, because these are kind of small little blocks. And now we're going to make sure this guy is straight. Our raw edges are all together. Don't ever be afraid to stop and adjust. All right, are we ready? It's the big reveal. See? All of our corners came together perfectly. So now we're gonna sew this one. We're gonna do the same thing. Make sure our seams sort of snap together. Get the extra threads out of the way so they don't get sewn in. Make sure our raw edges are all together. See? It turns out awesome. All right, so now we're gonna I press these seams open. And again, I use this constantly in this project. And I've had my folding pen for years, and I still am on my first bottle of Unicorn Tears. So don't worry that you're gonna run out. Don't be stingy, just use them, because they're there to help you. And you just, again, run it along. Sometimes, if it's really dry, you can squeeze a little bit right on the blue part, but don't squeeze a lot. Whoop. And then you'll have a cute little 9 patch. And then you just follow the directions to sew it together, okay? If we look at the scarf here, you'll see this guy's gonna go in, but you've got pieces to sew to the top and bottom, all right? And you'll have these strip sets from the first, from step 23, and then step 24 are these guys, and they'll tell you to sew these on. And then step 25 is you sew it all together, and you actually add long pieces of background fabric to it, okay? The directions are written so that you're making one scarf at a time. So I just did it exactly the way it was written. I made one scarf. I did all my cutting, and then another night I sewed one scarf together, and then the third night I sewed my third scarf together, and I was done. And like I said, they're really fun and cute. We have fabric folding pens in the shop. And if you've made it to this part in the video and you've never been part of our Block of the Month before, you should know somebody always wins free long arming. We're honoring that for this Block of the Month too. What that means is when you come in to pick up the kit for month 2, bring us your scarves and show them to us, and we'll put your name in the bucket. And at the end of our program, somebody will win. Their quilt will be long armed for free. All right? Good luck. Call the shop if you have any problems, and happy sewing.